What up, Rockstar? This is Evan from Stock Music Musician, and today I've got a video where I want to answer one key question. What is the difference between audio mixing and mastering? This may sound like a very elementary thing to some of you, but often when I work with students, either reviewing their classes or through coaching, I find that people kind of blur together the various stages of the musical process. So whether you're a beginner or an intermediate or advanced producer, I think there's something to learn from this lesson, because doing the right thing at the right time is how you save yourself a lot of headache and get a better sounding track. So in this video, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what audio mixing is versus mastering. I'm going to show you some real examples in this track that I have I'm in the process of finishing up. And I'm doing the one mistake that I often see people do here because I want to illustrate that. And that mistake is mastering before you finished mixing, or mastering and mixing simultaneously. Before we go farther, though, I do want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, DistroKid. It's basically the best site for getting your music released and on to Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. So once you're done mixing your track, once you're done mastering your track, click on the link down below to get 7% off your first year of using DistroKid to release that album that you make, that first song you have. Literally for less than $20, you can release an album, unlimited albums in a year. And with that link down below, you'll get 7% off. So let's turn to audio mixing versus audio mastering. At a high level, you can kind of think of this like a funnel. At the very bottom of the funnel, you have all the recording. You sit down, you record. Then you get, you pick the best performances, right? You maybe record like 3 versions of the vocals and you stitch that together to have the best version. Or, you record 4 different guitar solos and you only pick one. So you funnel that down into the next step, which is mixing. And in mixing, what you do is you put all the different instruments together, not only in terms of how loud they are relative to each other, but what sort of tone they have, how they, where they're located left to right, near to far. Do they automate? Do they get louder or quieter or pan left to right? And you really should make your song sound pretty damn cohesive and coherent by the time the mixing process is over. I often see people not doing enough work on mixing and expect the mastering process to bail them out. And that's not what mastering is for. Mastering is really almost more of quality control and preparing your music for the final medium that it's being transmitted into, whether that's back in the day a vinyl record or, today streaming. There are certain standards that need to be done in terms of volume, in terms of song length, things like that. In addition, you do make it louder when you master, but you're making it louder with the goal of making it appropriate for the right medium, and you polish the track a little bit. So here I want to give you a chance to listen to this song without any mastering plugins first. We'll listen to it with everything on, mixed and mastered, and then we'll break down each individual process. So here is the first playthrough. Let's start at the beginning of this little loop. So that's mixed and mastered. Now I'm going to turn off all of these plugins that I've got on my master bus to do my mastering. And at the end of the video, I'll walk you in even more detail through what they do, but I'm more focused on just the verses in terms of the sound. So all these are going off. And I'll toggle back and forth a couple of times.
It's the energy released.
On.
It's the energy released.
So I think what you'll hear is that you'll hear me not hitting pause at the right time, but what you'll hear is the song is louder, definitely. It is perceived as louder, but according to the meters, it's not that much louder. Although we've done some trickery to make it actually be louder than that, to be perceived as louder. But it's also brighter. It's a little more contained. It's got a touch more groove, and it's a little wider in the stereo space. So having said that, let's listen through one more time back and forth, and then we'll jump into the high-level overview of mixing and what audio mixing does as opposed to audio mastering. So, on and then off. And I'll keep this meter open the whole time so you can sort of see what's going on with the volume and that there's not a massive difference, even though it sounds much louder with everything on. So I'm setting the meter to the right threshold. Duller.
It's the energy released.
But it's still right. It's a little bit quieter. But now let's. It certainly feels a lot louder than it is, and it's definitely brighter and a little bassier and a little wider. So now let's contrast that with mixing. Basically, when you master, you have only everything put together, all of these songs. Like normally what I would do is take the unmastered version of this song and just export it as a WAV file, just like it was a MP3 that existed on its own. And then I would apply all this processing just to that final file. Whereas with mix, which means that I have no ability to reach in and adjust instruments relative to each other. I can't make the bass quieter or the snare louder than the kick. It means I can't pan the hi-hats from the left to the right, or, add more reverb or space to the vocals. That's what the mixing process is. As you'll see here, I've got all these different channels here that I'm mixing together. You can see that I've got different volumes set for each of them. And then I've got all sorts of effects that I'm applying to them. So I want to take just the example of the drums. So we'll just solo the drums. And I want to show you how both the plugins that I'm applying to the drums are making a big difference, but even just changing the levels and the panning of the drums affects a lot. So first, we'll start with all the plugins on. But let's say I want the kick to be quieter. Or I want it to be louder. And yes, when you're mastering, there are some things you can do. Like I could turn up the very low end or turn down the very low end on an EQ, but that would be affecting every instrument, right? The bass, part of the low end of the bass would get turned up or turned down, or maybe if there's a piano, that would be affected. Plus, if you look at a kick, there's actually a lot of information in the middle here, which we'll see, which wouldn't come through if I just turned down the low end or up the low end. It's also about, where are these claps located in the stereo spectrum? I could have all my claps over there. And, you know. But then there's also the processing that we do. So, like, it actually sounds louder like this. It probably is louder. But it's not nearly as controlled or punchy. Like, this hits you, right? This slaps you without any of the processing or without the bus processing. But with it, it really is beefy. And so audio mixing is basically just taking all of these little steps, adding them up, and you bake it all in to this sound. It's about making everything sit in its right place, its right volume relative to the other instruments. It's about adding interest with automation or interesting sound effects like this vocal here. Which I've called water vocals. We'll just go to this part and listen. Yeah. Yeah. Like, that sounds very interesting. But that's not how it originally sounded. It originally sounded like this. And so you're making these creative choices as well when you do audio mixing. Whereas when you're doing audio mastering, you're not going to be doing a lot of creative stuff. Instead, you're just looking to take what's already been created and make it the best version it can. Sometimes by taking out a few bad parts, sometimes by just ever so slightly enhancing it. So on this, for example, I'm running it through some tape emulation, which makes it a little fatter, a little low end bounce, a little tight bit of compression, which sort of glues everything together, and a little bit of saturation. Just fattens it up. Be bold. A little bit. Let's just turn the loop off. A little bit of saturation from this mixing console simulator, and a little EQ. Add in a little low end, a little high end. Now right now, the rap sounds too loud. Which is fine. Let's shine together if you want to get by. That sounds better to me. I can't do that when I'm mixing. I can do that, or I can't do. That's the sort of choice I can't make if I was just mastering this. That is a mixing choice, and that's why I have to spend more time mixing. You do not want to be doing these two things simultaneously in the same track. I'm just doing that for education purposes. Then we're taking out some harsh frequencies. Using some compression to glue everything together. I'm like a moth to a flame, not jotting a phrase in the plot to get paid, but in the point of play music you remember for days, so it remains. And it's so strange to find a little bit of limiting to clip any real out of the way bits, which aren't really any. You need to learn the lesson that your presence is divine. So go ahead and some more EQ. It's the energy released. And then a little more EQ. Take away a few more ugly spots, a little imaging to make it wider, and then we make it a little bit louder, but not a ton. Maybe a ton. Hopefully you found this video helpful in comparing audio mixing versus audio mastering, and you learned a few things about what to do in each step of the process. Also, hopefully, you learned a little bit about when to stop mixing and when to start mastering. Basically, your song should sound really good and you should be happy with how it sounds when it's mixed, even if it was never mastered. That's usually, it's much like the cheesy saying, dance like nobody's watching. You want to mix like nobody's going to master your song. So you want your mix to sound as good as possible and as professional as possible. You definitely don't want to master like nobody's listening, though. You definitely want people to listen to your song. And so that's why DistroKid, link below, and the sponsor of this video, is a great choice for actually getting people to listen to your music once you're done with it, once you've mastered it. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any questions along the way, just leave them below and I'll be happy to help as best I can. Thanks.